Are you having a hard time figuring out what to get Dad for Father's Day? You should check out Row 1 Brand's Vintage Pictorum Gallery. They have America's best sports art. With over 7,200 historic sports prints, you're assured to find something unique for Dad this Father's Day. Instead of a boring old tie, get him a historic baseball photo taken by Henry High Sandom at the historic Polo Grounds Stadium in New York City during the 1894 Temple Cup. Or, if he's an NFL buff, check out the 1963 vintage NFL poster. These are so good looking that you'll be amazed how they turn out. Shop now at sportshistorynetwork.com/row1 and save 15% off your order.
We know the number 23 is very famous in NBA circles because Michael Jordan wore it. But what about the NFL? Well, we're going to come up with the top 10 NFL's greatest number 23s in just a moment. This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. This is your host, Darren Hayes, and we're podcasting from the Pigpen on America's North Shore, bringing you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time. So with Gene and Mike Monroe, as well as Jason Neff's appliance with the great tunes, let's go no huddle through today's top stories of American football history.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com, and welcome to the special edition, bonus edition of the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch Football by Numbers series, where today we're going to find the greatest number 23s in NFL history. And this is a solo mission today. No guests today, just my voice. But we're going to go through some great NFL players that wore that number 23. And we'll start off with the Hall of Fame gives us only one player that wore the number 23 that's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. And that's Guy Chamberlain, who played and coached in the National Football League in the earliest years when the only meaningful statistic kept was the team's one-loss record. And Guy Chamberlain is on that list, and probably better known as a coach because that's where he got most of his records from. You know, as a matter of fact, he in his 6 coaching seasons, 5 which were spent as a player coach, he won 4 NFL championships with the Canton Bulldogs and the Cleveland Bulldogs. So had a great team behind him, played on a great team, was a great player, but really known as a coach, getting in there with that number 23. So we're not going to put him on our list because we don't really have any statistics for him, and he's probably got in that Hall of Fame more for his coaching. You know, when you have 4 NFL championships in 6 seasons, that's a pretty good standing record there. I don't know if that'll ever be beaten if somebody will retire after that. But we're going to talk about some great players here, and the first one that we're going to talk about is on the NFL staff, the headquarters in New York, and that's Troy Vincent. And Troy, he's a defensive back, and he played for the Miami Dolphins for his first 4 seasons, and then had a bunch of years, as a matter of fact, 8 years in Philadelphia, finished up with 3 years in Buffalo, 1 in Washington, played from 1992 through the 2006 season, and he is a DB that came out of the College of Wisconsin University. Great player there too. But he had 47 interceptions to his credit, 711 return yards on them in 207 games. And that makes Troy Vincent a very outstanding player that wore the number 23 in the NFL. And we are going to put him on that list as one of our top players. We'll put him on that list right now. Another great player who has some Super Bowl wins under his belt is Mike Wagner. And he was a defensive back that played with the Pittsburgh Steelers from 1971 through 1980. As a matter of fact, you know, he got 4 Super Bowl victories while playing for them. Was known as a very outstanding DB, and he had 36 interceptions in 119 games. So less games, almost as many interceptions, 491 return yards, no touchdowns for defensive back Mike Wagner of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He is also going on our list Another great player that wore number 23 is, how about Devin Hester? Devin Hester came out of the Miami of Florida, Miami Hurricanes program. 5'11", 190 pounds. He's a punt returner, wide receiver, but maybe one of the greatest returners in NFL history. Had a great career, 8 years with the Chicago Bears, 2 with the Atlanta Falcons, 1 with the Baltimore Ravens, 1 with Seattle Seahawks. And what he did in the return game was unbelievable. He had 16 touchdowns as a receiver, 255 receptions for 33-11 on his receiving yards, and for his returns, his punt returns, he had 3,695 yards, 14 touchdowns on punt returns, 5 kickoff returns for touchdowns with 7,333 yards. I mean, that is just exceptional numbers, and I think they're probably the highest return yards of anybody that I'm aware of that in the return game in the NFL history. And wore that number 23 his whole career with Chicago, so 8 years he wore it with the Chicago Bears, and was quite the exciting, electric return player. And we're also going to put him on our list because he is another really good one. Well, now we got to fill 7 more spots. So let's go through and look at some of these players that we have here. We have, how about Patrick Surtain? He was a defensive back that played in 1998 through the 2008 season. Played with the Miami Dolphins for 7 years, Kansas City for 4. And what he did is he had 37 interceptions in 163 games, 430 return yards on those interceptions, 2 touchdowns. 435 solo tackles, 547 total tackles for Mr. Surtain. So he is another good one to talk about. We'll put him on a standby list here. We also had Dave Weitzel. He was another great defender, DB. He ended up having 46 interceptions to his credit, 161 games, 662 return yards off those, 4 touchdowns. We do not have his tackle numbers, but he was a great player. Played with the Detroit Lions from 1958 and played with them 3 years. His career was 1958 all the way to 1969. Chicago was 6 years, 3 years Detroit, and 3 years with the New Orleans Saints when they were a brand new team in the NFL. And but just that era to have that many interceptions, 46, that definitely gives him some candidacy to be considered to go onto our list. And how about another great defender, and D'Angelo Hall, who's a little more of a contemporary player. He has played since 2004 and played all the way to 2017. He had 10 years with the Washington Redskins, 4 as an Atlanta Falcon, 1 year as an Oakland Raider in the middle of his career. But he had some great numbers too. In 171 games that he played, 43 interceptions, 838 return yards, 5 scores off of those. His tackle numbers, he's had 814 total tackles, so he would play the ball and the player, make some tackles. D'Angelo Hall, I think he is another one that's good enough that he's going to go onto our list here. So that takes up 4 spaces on our list. Brig Owens is another one I'd like to talk about. And Brig Owens was another defensive back. He ended up having 36 interceptions in 158 games, 686 return yards off of those, 3 touchdowns, and we do not have anything from that era because he played from 1966 to 1977, his entire career with the Washington Redskins as a free safety and strong safety and every other kind of safety you can imagine. He definitely played Brig Owens, another great defensive back. And how about Goose Gosselin? And he, another great player here that we had for a DB position, had 46 interceptions, 561 return yards, 2 touchdowns, played from 1960 to 1967 in the AFL, the Denver Broncos, and San Francisco 49ers at the end of his career, 1967, so he did have 1 NFL career year. But just those numbers, 46 interceptions, playing that high-flying AFL, definitely under consideration. Blaine Bishop is another defensive back we'd like to talk about for these number 23s. And Blaine had 15 and a half sacks, 544 solo tackles, and his interceptions were only about 5, but had a lot of those sacks. Really moves his numbers up there, helps move the needle on him a little bit, puts him under consideration. Another player, Perry Williams, a defensive back, played for North Carolina State in college, and he was a New York Giant through and through from 1984 to 1993, playing that right cornerback position for them. Had 18 interceptions, 79 yards on returns, 146 games. Not sure that he's going to make it with those kind of numbers, but maybe our next guy will, and that's Joe Hayden. Joe Hayden, a great cornerback, came up with the Cleveland Browns, one of the top picks in the NFL draft. Currently, the last few years he's been with the Pittsburgh Steelers. 7 years in Cleveland, 4 years in Pittsburgh so far. Looks like he's going to play a 5th year in Pittsburgh, and playing that left corner position where he locks up with usually the top wide receivers. He's had 29 interceptions in 146 games, 290 return yards, and 2 touchdowns. One of those happened in the 2020 season we just got through with. So Joe Hayden, another candidate to possibly make our list of our top players. Quentin Jammer is another. Wow, so many great defensive backs wearing the number 23. And Quentin Jammer played with the San Diego Chargers for most of his careers. 11 of his 12 years played with San Diego, 1 last year with the Denver Broncos. And he ended up having 21 interceptions, 210 yards return yards, and 1 touchdown off of that interception. But he also posted up 735 total tackles and 11 tackles for loss. So he was another good player there that's under consideration. Bobby Butler's another one I'd like to bring up. And Bobby was another great DB. Played with the Atlanta Falcons his entire career, 1981 to 1992. Nice long career wearing that number 23 the entire time. Had 27 interceptions on 169 games, 222 yards returned off the interceptions, 1 touchdown. Bobby was another great, Bobby Butler, another great player. And how about Marcus Trufant? If you want to bring out some names of great defensive backs. Marcus, 136 games, 21 interceptions, 370 yards returned on those, 2 touchdowns. Of course, played for the Seattle Seahawks from 2003 through 2012. He made it to 1 Pro Bowl. Great player, nice player. Put him on our consideration to make it on our list. And then we've got some players that were some running backs. We have Arian Foster, who was a running back that played mostly for the Houston Texans and played 1 last season with Miami in 2016. 2009 through 2016 was the seasons, 7 of them with Houston. And he ended up having 6,527 yards for his career, 54 touchdowns. Was a pretty prominent back for a couple years there in the NFL. Made 4 Pro Bowls, 1 as an All-Pro. So he's another one that's definitely considered to be maybe on our list here of some of our great players in NFL history wearing that number 23. I think that's probably covering most of our players that were going here. So maybe we need to go back and review here. We're saying we got 4 spots already locked up. We said Troy Vincent, Mike Wagner, Devin Hester, and D'Angelo Hall have spots locked up. Well, I'm going to put Patrick Surtain on there too in that list. We told you what he did. And also Dave Weitzel, I'm going to put him on that list as well. Rounding out the numbers is Brig Owens, Goose Gonsolin, and Joe Hayden. And our final pick, Arian Foster, who we just talked about at the running back position. Those are our top 10 picks of the greatest number 23s to play in the NFL and wear that number 23 jersey. And we really appreciate you joining us here for this. And we are going to have some more great Football by Numbers series coming up this week. have some great guests. Dana Auguster is going to be talking about the number 24s with us here in a day or two. And Dana has just some great recall on some players, and I think you're really going to enjoy what he brings. You heard him earlier in the season talking about some other numbers, but Dana's a great one on the number 24s. 25s will be a solo podcast, and then we're going to bring Chris Willis of NFL Films in later this week to talk about the greatest number 26s that have played in the NFL. So NFL Films head of their library there, Chris Willis is, and he will bring some great insight to the great players that wore that number 26. So hope you join us tomorrow for our football history headlines and some more of these bonus Football by Numbers series on the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch. And you can check us out on pigskindispatch@gmail.com. If we miss anybody, you can email us there and let us know what you think. And on a future podcast, we will correct any errors that we look at after an investigation and see that, hey, you are right. And it's really easy to miss because there's hundreds and thousands of players that wore the number 23, and we want to get it right. So again, pigskindispatch@gmail.com. You can email us out. Check us out at pigskindispatch.com and the sportshistorynetwork.com, where you can find the headquarters of sports yesteryear. And until tomorrow, everybody, have a great gridiron day. Peeking up at the clock, the time's running down. We're going to go into victory formation, take a knee, and let this baby run out. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back tomorrow for the next podcast. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. A special thanks to the talents of Mike and Jean Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
At the Sports History Network, we're all about sports yesteryear, and so we're so pleased to introduce you to Row One, an online memorabilia gallery and shop that brings your sports history to life anywhere. The Row One gallery includes over 5,200 gorgeously reproduced prints of team posters, game program covers, game tickets, advertisements, and more in baseball, pro and college football, pro and college basketball, and more. And any gallery item may be printed in a variety of sizes on wood, metal, canvas, acrylic, or poster paper. And in Row One shop, check out the thousands more of unique items with the retro and historical designs dating back to 1876, including t-shirts, long sleeve shirts, phone cases, mugs, blankets, pillows, towels, and even shower curtains. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com, ROW1, for access to the full Row One catalog and for gallery prints and gift items, plus get a 15% discount off all prints on the Row One Pictorium Gallery with coupon code SHN15. Follow the link on the show notes.